Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat?
We're a day away. NFL Draft, round one, Thursday. Great time to catch up with our guy, Ross Jackson, Locked On Saints. He's on Twitter at Ross Jackson Nola. How are you, man?
Hey, buddy. I'm doing great, man. Glad to be here with you.
Hey, thank you. With the news today of James Hurst retiring, that solidifies, right? There is no other option whatsoever for New Orleans at 14 than taking an offensive lineman, correct?
Yeah, I think that their biggest need just went from an offensive tackle to 3/5 of an offensive line to kind of over the last week.
Yes.
And so, you know what I mean? And so I think any decision to go opposite that in the first round has to be circumstantial, right? It would have to be that, teams left them in order to be able to go and grab, players that they would otherwise be targeting, so on and so forth. But otherwise, if you're sitting there at 14 and one of those guys is on the board there for you, whether it's, Talisa Fuaga out of Oregon State to help you on the right side, Olu Fashanu out of Penn State to help you on the left side, you got to go with one of those guys.
Do you have a preference?
Not necessarily between those two. I think those would both be home runs. I have Olu Fashanu rated higher on my board, so I guess technically that would be the preference. The thing about Fashanu is that it just creates another interesting situation over on the offensive line because you get a career left tackle and an immediate plug-and-play starter at left tackle on that side, but then you got to figure out what you're going to be doing with Trevor Penning in that situation. And so does that create more complication? Does that help you? So maybe a guy on the right side, like a Talisa Fuaga out of Oregon State or J.C. Latham, is just a cleaner pick. But if Olu Fashanu is the best player on your board, you got to probably go with the best player on your board.
Did what Mickey Loomis said about Trevor Penning on Tuesday, does that influence any way that you feel about how this offensive line is structured? Maybe a better way to ask the question, Ross, is what do you think is the path for Penning this year?
I think it's got to be all about fitting in the right way when it comes to this new wide zone offense. It's finding the ability to be able to contribute in an offense that is going to be predicated on its run game. That's going to be predicated on getting offensive linemen moving, allowing him to take advantage of that athleticism that he does have in terms of long athleticism and all those other things. I think that the biggest thing that he's got to be able to overcome at this point is how do you build confidence? And beating people up in the run game is a really good way to build confidence. Yeah. And so I think that that's got to kind of be the thing for him, is that if they're able to kind of figure out a way to cornerstone him or, to kind of, settle him in because of his contributions in the run game, which then ends up benefiting in the pass protection because his confidence is back, then I think that that's the way that you have to be able to do it. But the Saints didn't do him any favors last year when it came to confidence, right? They benched him 6 games in, didn't even let him be the jumbo tight end guy. I think those things matter, and so finding a way to be able to navigate that this season becomes paramount.
Ross, we're talking so much about the offensive line for obvious reasons. I mean, I don't know that there's a team in the NFL that has a position group that's as big a need as offensive line is for the Saints. I mean, there may be. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I know everything about all 32 rosters, but it's that big of a need, so we all understand that. But as you look at the rest of the draft, and the Saints sitting here with 9 selections, how do you rank or grade need versus want for New Orleans throughout the 3 days, like after offensive line?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think if we accept offensive tackle and now also interior offensive line as its own need together, right? Those two positions as their own offensive line need. Then I think that the next thing that you're really looking for is how do you improve your run defense over on the opposite side of the ball? They didn't get the steps forward that they really wanted to take last year when it came to defending the run. And their best run-stopping interior player is a Denver Bronco, along with Sean Payton and the rest of the non-New Orleans Saints that have gone over to Denver. And so I think you have to find a way to be able to rebuild the interior of that defensive line. So I think that's a big one. Possession receivers, obviously a bigger one, but receiver and pass catcher so easy to translate to the next level. Excuse me, not easy, but easier to translate to the next level. And so finding that guy can happen, as the opportunity presents itself. It's not something you necessarily have to go in and target. And there are still some of those free agents that can help you post-draft as well. And I still think that safety is right there too, as my next one, because you've got Jonathan Abram, who looked really good next to Tyrann Mathieu for the last 2 games of the season last year. Jordan Howden held that spot down when Marcus May was injured and or suspended. And so I think that's great, but you're effectively playing Jordan Howden out of position in that case. They really like him as a post safety, a deep single high safety guy. And so can you find somebody in this year's draft that can be sort of that downhill pursuit player in the box that can, threaten on the defensive line on 3rd and long and make you believe that he might be rushing the passer, which Marcus May didn't really present that threat. So I think that's another place where they could go.
Ross Jackson's our guest, Locked On Saints. So he's on Twitter at Ross Jackson Nola. Make sure you're following him. Great insights as always. Ross, so first of all, I'm interested you went interior line because most people start after offensive line with wide receiver. So it was interesting, but I'm so glad you brought up safety because even if we accept the Saints really like Jordan Howden and Jonathan Abram, okay, like you're still down a man. Like, right. You got to find help at safety somewhere, draft or free agency. So which is your preference and why?
Yeah, I think going draft makes sense because you're adding young talent. That's one of the things that the defense needs to do, right? One of your top defenders is over 30 years old, or one of your top safeties is over 30 years old when it comes to Tyrann Mathieu. And so I think finding talent and youth in the same selection makes sense. The Saints could make a splash after the draft. They've done it before, and they could bring in a Justin Simmons or something like that. But then again, what is that for? 3 years, 4 years? What do you find there? And so can you find somebody that ends up being a little bit more long-term for you, even though safeties tend not to get second contracts in the league? And so that's something to maybe keep an eye out on as a reason why. And honestly, Matt, I think that goes for cornerback, too. It has nothing to do with the early conversations of the potential trade of Marshawn Lattimore, which have gone completely lukewarm in terms of those comments and conversations these days. But, you still numbers-wise don't have enough cornerbacks on your roster. And so I think even drafting cornerbacks makes sense, right? Still continuing to pay attention to the defensive backs in a very good defensive back the coaching staff, right? Coaching staff that's really good at coaching those guys. I think it makes sense to look at both of those positions as worthy investments, whether you do them surprisingly early or later. We know that the Saints love DBs in the second round. That could be a way that they go with like a Tyler Nubin out of Minnesota or something like that. But for the most part, I think like when it comes to the safety spot, you want to add youth and you want to add talent. If you can do that all in one broad stroke, go for it.
Ross, does signing Chase Young and drafting Isaiah Foskey a year ago, does that eliminate the need for an edge rusher in this draft?
I don't think so. I don't think it eliminates the need. I do think that it does give you the benefit of being able to select that player if the value is right, wherever it is that you're drafting. And that could be in the 6th round. That could be, one of those 5th round selections, assuming that they don't trade all of them away. I assume that they'll trade some collection of those 7th round selections in the last 3 rounds, or 7th total selections in the last 3 rounds. But I think it's still a position that they could address. And I think that it's still a position that they could look to add another body to. I think, because you rotate so much, you still don't know if Peyton Turner is going to be able to stay healthy. You don't know if Isaiah Foskey is going to be able to stay healthy. And you're still looking at, just like we talked about with Tyrann Mathieu, you're still trying to prepare yourself for the days after Cam Jordan. And even Chase Young's only on a 1-year deal. So not only are you looking at the draft of what's going to help you in 2024, you got to be ready of what's going to help you 2025 and beyond as well.
He is Ross Jackson, Locked On Saints. Make sure you get him on Twitter at Ross Jackson Nola. All right, 9 picks for the Saints. How many do they actually make over the 3 days?
I wouldn't be surprised to see them still use up to selections. I mean, you can package a pair of those 5th round picks, not even the first 2. They got 150, 168, 170, and 175. You could package the latter 2. You could package the 2nd and the 4th one, and then try to move up into the 120 area. That could be a good place to target a wide receiver, potentially a Brendan Rice out of USC, who is a quintessential X receiver, possession guy, good hands, great route runner, and you get Jerry Rice potentially in your room every now and then with your young wide receivers. Why would you turn that down? Yeah. And so I think that I could see them packaging a pair of those selections to move up. There's a lot of chatter right now about the potential of moving up in the 1st round to go and grab an offensive tackle. I think that they should stay put. I think a lot of that conversation could be smokescreeny, right? Some of those 10 through 14 teams saying, or 10 through 13 teams saying, oh, you better come up and get your guy. Oh, no, you know what I mean? And so we'll see exactly where that goes. But I think moving up a little bit into the close to the top 100 and getting another pick within the top, let's call it 125, could be valuable for this team. So with 9 selections, package 2 to move up, I could see them making at least 8 selections in this year's draft.
Oh, man. That just don't. All right, I'm for it, Ross, because they need bodies, right? They need bodies.
Yeah.
But I don't trust this organization at all to make 8 picks in a draft, man. But if they do it, we'll see.
Yeah, I think the tricky part is that you can go out there and you can take 8 swings, right? But then if only 3 of those guys make the roster, what's the difference between taking 8 swings and 4 swings at that point, right? And so, if you get 4 swings of guys that are going to make your roster and you go 4 for 4, you're batting 100, you're batting 1,000, that's great. You can take 8 swings to walk away with 3. It's the crapshoot of the NFL draft, man. And so, I could see them just trying to be really specific about the guys that they're targeting, but also trying to increase the volume of it. But it can be a little bit of a spaghetti at the wall approach, and I'd rather my spaghetti on my plate than on the wall.
Make sure you subscribe to the podcast and the YouTube channel, Locked On Saints. Ross does a great job. Daily Saints content. You got to be subscribed up to his stuff. Ross, we appreciate it, man. Thanks so much for making time, as always.
Oh, dude, always a pleasure. Take care, stay safe, and look forward to talking to you here again soon.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.